Hello everyone, my name is Diego Góméz-Zará. I'm a PhD student at Northwestern University, and I'm delighted to present this work called Do I Know You? The Effects of Social Capital on Self-Assembled Teams. As work in organizations is increasingly moving to online environments, distributed teams are becoming more relevant in workplaces. And despite the fact that workers continue occupying physical spaces, today collaboration have blurred and the technologies have blurred the boundaries between the physical office and the place where workers actually work together. Although the study of computer-mediated communication technologies for teams became an early focal point for communication scholars, little is known about how people assemble teams using those technologies. Research on how people assemble their teams has been conducted in face-to-face settings, where workers have access to others' characteristics, social networks, and personalities. In contrast to assembled teams in face-to-face conditions, workers who interact online can only judge other potential teammates' information as it is mediated by computers. In this paper, we want to answer this question: how will people choose teammates, in particular considering that they're using online technologies? In this study, we assessed how people assemble teams using computer-mediated communication technologies and how people's offline social capital influence their choices at the moment of searching for, inviting, and accepting others as teammates. In order to study this problem, we use social capital theory to understand how people choose and accept other teammates. What is social capital? Social capital has been described by multiple disciplines. We use this definition that it basically says that social capital are the resources that individuals have access through their social relationships. And because of that, social capital provides a lot of benefits, such as information, influence, career success, finding jobs, resources exchange, and other resources. And one concept that emerged in the 70s by Granovetter was the strength of the ties. And basically is this distinction and classification of our connections. Some of those are stronger. Those are usually those ones that provide us emotional support, and we usually interact multiple times, more frequently every day. In contrast, we have also connections that they are not so frequent, they are more sporadic. Maybe they are from people who are outside of our fields, but those are also beneficial for us, and those are called the weak ties. And those could be acquaintances, friends, coworkers, people who can just have the opportunity to interact in another context. Putman, in his book Bowling Alone, also called for this distinction and called it like bridging capital and bonding capital, respectively. And we're seeing now how social capital is changing, especially in online contexts. And the studies in communication had also been curious about how technologies are changing these relationships and how social capital can be exercised. On the one hand, online technologies can support relationships that already exist online. And this is what basically we are seeing in social platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, that most people interact with their friends or people who they already know offline. But on the other hand, these technologies also have helped people to meet new others in order to exchange information, get social support, or establish new and meaningful relationships, which may not have been found in offline settings. And one question that remains in the literature is how these platforms are helping people to assemble teams. What is the role of the offline social capital and the technologies at the moment of when people must form a team, considering the increasing use of technologies in workplaces, especially considering the current situation with the pandemic, like most people are starting new jobs and they are starting working with others who they practically interact online or maybe in an hybrid context. At the moment of forming teams, Will people's social capital play differently when they're using computer-mediated communication technologies? And for that reason, we established four hypotheses that we want to test. The first one is about the strength of the tie. If the strength of the tie helps people to assemble teams or just to assemble groups at the moment when they are trying to meet new people using technologies. People are more inclined to work with those who are familiar with them rather than strangers. And people who have had positive interactions in the past are likely to be positively disposed toward one another since there is an expectation that the person's behavior will be similar in the future. Thus, we expect that because people are trying to seek predictability, people will be more likely to choose to work with others who they have already worked with, in particular if that experience was positive. Therefore, we propose that the strength of the tie is positively correlated with the likelihood of being A, invited, and B, accepted to be a part of a team online. The second hypothesis tells us about the number of weak ties. Literature shows that people who have multiple weak ties are more likely to gain experience from their relationships and be perceived as having more resources and success than those who are less connected. This is also known as the rich get richer effect, in which individuals with many connections are more likely to establish new connections than less connected individuals. Therefore, we expect and we propose the following hypothesis. Users who have many weak ties are more likely to be A, invited to form a new team online, and also to be accepted than those who have less weak ties. The third hypothesis is that also we expect that individuals who have multiple strong ties, they will be more likely to be invited and accepted to be part of a team assembled online. Prior research shows that having multiple strong ties leads to a redundancy of contacts, since individuals with strong ties are likely to be connected among themselves and be constrained within that group. Also, strong ties provide trust and social support, and we expect that individuals highly connected in strong tie networks can be perceived as more trustworthy and similar to the majority of individuals. For these reasons, we propose the following hypothesis. Users who have many strong ties are more likely to be A, invited to form a team online, and B, to be accepted than those who have less strong ties. The fourth hypothesis is about leadership, which requires individuals to interact with many established relationships and build large social networks. Peer studies have shown that leaders tend to be highly connected with many members of their community's organizations and being able to amplify their reputation and influence others. Leaders are also likely to be more connected and be more likely to gain knowledge about their social connection structures, connect to central others, and forge connections between unconnected actors. Therefore, we expect that individuals with prior leadership experience are more likely to be invited and accepted as part of a team than those who don't have that experience. In order to answer our questions, we conducted a field study to observe how members were assembled teams using an online platform. And we use a platform called My Dream Team, where users assemble teams by searching, inviting, accepting, or declining invitations from others. We analyzed the research question based on the human and social capital. So basically, we're studying how people were selecting others and inviting and see if those teams assemble and what were the characteristics. This platform basically had three stages. People complete the initial survey when we ask a lot of questions related to the individual skills, social connections, and then users were able to use a recommender searcher in order to find others. And as well as they were scrolling and seeing for potential candidates, they could start inviting others to form a team. They could accept or decline an invitation to form a team. To conduct this study, we used the system in 15 courses, having a total of 854 students participants. And also the idea was just like we have undergrad classes where they had to do a quarter project, and also we have graduate courses that when they had to develop a case study analysis. To understand the relationship and analysis of these networks, we use exponential random graph models to identify the individual, relational, and network level variables that best explained the motivations behind team member selection. And in just a simple idea, the network that we modeled was in order to predict the likelihood of one invitation from one user to another. In other words, you can see that dashed line in which we want to see how likely was going to be that interaction between those users, one user inviting another to form a team based on individual, relational, and structural properties that we observe. And in order to understand the first hypothesis, we asked participants about their peer relationships. Who on this list do you know? And then we show a list of people in the course. Then who have you worked with on projects? And the third question was, with whom on this list do you enjoy socializing? Based on the intersection of those questions, we calculated the strength of the ties as the following. The weak ties were just like the first question, who do you know? If they answered the first and the second, that was the intermediate strength. And if a person was completing those three questions, that was defined as the strong tie between two individuals. And to model and to distinguish invitation and acceptance networks, we separated these two. We defined first the invitation network as all the invitations sent by the participants and then created the acceptance network by retaining only the invitations that they were accepted based on the invitees' response. We measured different variables on the individual, relation, and network level, and also we accounted for homophily effects. In total, we have more than 3,000 invitations that the students sent, in which 938 were accepted, 238 were rejected, and approximately 2,000 were ignored. Our results shows the following. First, the strength of the tie matters. In other words, if a person needing to invite someone, it will tend to invite someone who already knows or who have enjoyed socializing in the past. And also, those people who have those ties, they were connected by those relationships, were more likely to accept that person. In our second hypothesis, we also found that the number of weak ties matters. Those who have a lot of weak ties were more likely to be invited. However, the people who have many strong ties were less likely to be invited. We did not find any significant statistical evidence in the acceptance model. In other words, having more weak ties or having more strong ties did not affect their acceptance. And finally, we found that people who have more leadership experience were more likely to be invited, and also they were more likely to be accepted. Here's the summary of the results. Basically, we found enough evidence for the first, second, and fourth hypotheses. However, we didn't find any strong evidence for the strong ties, for the number of the strong ties. To summarize, in this study, we explored how people were assembled teams using an online platform system, and we measured how their social capital affected their likelihood to be invited to form a team or to be accepted. And we found interesting results and also some future questions that could explore and help us to continue in future studies. The first aspect is understanding why people are choosing specific teammates. We understand like familiarity, similarity are strong forces at the moment of choosing people. And that's because it reduces the uncertainty and the failure risks at the moment of choosing or with working with someone and also to start a new endeavor. So the challenge for these technologies is how to reduce that uncertainty and how to reduce that likelihood of rejection, and how technologies can promote more effective, diverse relationships among users who not necessarily know each other. That's one of the challenges of these technologies, and we are very excited to understand much better how the design, the affordances of these technologies can help people to make better choices. Thank you so much for your attention, and I will be very happy to answer your questions.